Well, welcome back. Today is the Sixers episode of Around the Association. So, for those Philly fans, we got a lot to talk about. So, Philly, they beat the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs last year, and they got swept by the Knicks after now that was the eventual champions, and the Knicks swept multiple teams. So, it's not like they lost to some bad team, and they did beat the Celtics. So all in all, it seems like, look, they go in, maybe some retools here and here, and they go back out. But they decided to trade for Jaylen Brown to fix those holes. Jaylen Brown being a player of the team they beat. So Jaylen Brown looking a little sneaky. I'm kidding. Um, but yeah, so they traded Jaylen Brown for Paul Jordan, 2 first-round picks. Everyone knows this. I'm not gonna harp on that much. And then they signed LeBron James. Everyone knows this. Not going to harp on that too much. Good additions. However, they're both ball dominant players. And I kind of already made an entire Philly episode like 2 days ago. So I'm not going to, try to do too much with this. And I'm going to try to talk about the outside parts. So they signed Hug 40 along with Dean Wade, Anthony Simons, KCP, which was a thing about yesterday. So if I made this yesterday, I wouldn't have known about that. And LeBaron Philon. So they drafted. I was really worried about the defense. And although I still am a little bit, especially with the starting lineup, adding KCP I think really helps the defense. And I think that's really scary because even though KCP is not, his prime self and he's a little bit older, he's still a very good NBA player and a very good 3-and-D role player. And there's a reason he got bought out by the Memphis Grizzlies is because he can add value somewhere else. And Philly was like, hey, we need a better defense. We have two good defenders in our starting lineup, and we should be able to plug and play KCP and Dean Wade a little more. And Dean Wade's a good defender too, so they can have a pretty good defensive lineup out there. Now, with KCP, uh, notable departures that they had. So Grimes and Oubre left via signing with somewhere else. And Kyle Lowry retired, although he technically did sign with the Raptors, but he did retire. And then Andre Drummond signed with the Knicks. So the Knicks and Sixers kind of did a Huck 40 for Drummond swap, almost. And then Grimes went to the Lakers, and Oubre went to Indiana. Yeah. So that's kind of the list of what they did. And they retained a bunch of players, but it's the players that were on their own team. So, I'm excited. I really like the Sixers, obviously. I think everyone likes them. I would definitely say they're 1A contender in the East right now, up there with the Knicks and really just up there with the Knicks. I mean, I don't consider the Pacers 1A contenders right now. I would say that it's really just the Knicks and the Sixers, and then the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Pacers are in their own other tier. But yeah, so I got a lot of hope for this team at least. I think it can go far, but I also think it might be championship or bust. And here's why. I don't know if LeBron James doesn't have it and at 42 and he's like clearly laboring, he has a player option, so he might just decline it and retire. That's totally possible. He said that he's not going to make another decision, so LeBron is either going to take that player option or not take it and retire. So I don't think this team can win a championship without LeBron. And I think LeBron moves the needle a little bit. I don't think 42-year-old LeBron moves a lot, but I think he just pushes them into they could do it, similar to what the Knicks were last year. They're like the preseason Knicks. Obviously, at a point, they were like, oh, yeah, they're going to do it. But preseason Knicks, it was like, they could do it. But they weren't the favorites at all, and I don't think the Sixers are favorites right now. But they could do it. I think that there's a lot to love about this team and a lot to hate about it. First of all, I think the on-ball defense is going to be really bad, and I'm not trying to hate or anything, but I think if they go against a team with a lot of good offensive one-on-one players, the Sixers are just going to be behind and they're not going to be able to keep up with them. And they have too many slow-footed people on their team, and they're going to have to outscore a lot of teams. And that kind of sounds pretty dumb because of course you got to fucking outscore teams. That's how you play basketball. But a lot of times you can score a normal amount and keep a team under that amount, but they're going to have to go band for band, bucket for bucket, and a lot of other teams have better defensive units. Like I would say the Lakers get a little bit of a better defensive lineup, and they have just as good scoring. So yeah, obviously they wouldn't see the Lakers in a playoff series unless it's the finals. But yeah, what do I really think about Sixers? I like it. I think it's a good team. I would definitely say they can win the championship, which I can probably only predict for like 4 teams or 5 teams. So I'm not gonna sit here and say like I did earlier the other day. Oh, I'm not scared. This defense was horrible. The defense is gonna be bad, but I really do think KCP moves the needle, and I don't know how LeBron and Embiid are going to be playing in the regular season, specifically games. So maybe they do have more lineups where Dean Wade is starting and where KCP is more of a 6-man role in terms 6th or 7th man. And, they do have better defensive lineups out there. And then in the playoffs, they get a more healthy Embiid and LeBron that can, put a lot more energy into that side of the floor. And yeah, I don't think that's a bad move at all. And their defense could shock me, and I wouldn't expect it to be bad anymore. However, I would say that they're not my favorite, like I said, and I wouldn't even know if they're my favorite to come out of the East. They're definitely either 1 or 2 with the Knicks, but I have to do a little bit more thinking about that. The Knicks did get worse, but the Sixers got a lot better. But is that enough to make up a 4-game sweep? I don't know. But we'll find out. I mean, this is basketball. We watch so we can learn, and I'm excited to see what happens this season. A lot has happened this offseason, and I can only expect that a lot is going to happen this regular season and playoffs, and maybe not with players moving, but it just feels historic. And obviously, we have the thing about the parity of the league, and everyone saying, "Oh, there's been no new repeat winners since 2019. It's been a different team every year." Right? And that's very true. However, it gets to a point where it's like, all right, someone's got to do it, right? You had the Raptors, then the Lakers, then the Bucks, then the Warriors, then the Nuggets, then the Celtics, then the Thunder, then now the Knicks. And looking at the rest of the league, do I think any teams outside that could do it realistically? The Sixers might be at the top of that list. Maybe the Spurs probably, yeah. But they're probably right about there with the Sixers. I don't know who I would take in that series, but yeah, I mean, Sixers or Spurs really. In terms of if you're going by that, since the second apron, no one's had multiple championships. Yeah, for sure, you could definitely go with that. And it was a fun fact when it was like 4 years, 5 years, but now it's like gonna be 8 years, dude. This is kind of like becoming a trend, and obviously someone's gonna have to do it eventually. And there's still well-built teams like the Thunder and the Knicks, and I mean the Lakers. I don't think will do it, but I wouldn't put them in they got a shot. But if everything went right, if they ran into the right injuries, if the Celtics shock us and Paul George had some spring left that he didn't have before, you never know. But yeah, that's my recap on the Sixers. Obviously, they're gonna be a good team. They're gonna be a great team. It. I hope they don't play LeBron and Embiid a lot in the regular season because they need to be rested for the playoffs, and you don't want them to get hurt or spent, and they're old and crippled. So yeah, but this team can really do a lot of great things, and they could definitely win the championship. And that's probably one of the first times in the process era I've been like, oh yeah, the Sixers are dangerous, dangerous. Aside from like that 2023 year with Embiid's MVP season. But yeah. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. That's the Sixers. I will do the next tomorrow. So stay tuned.